Kicking off the list at number 10, Metallo. Making his first appearance in Superman Volume 2, Metallo aka John Corbin is a cyborg powered by kryptonite. Sounds scary already. He's one of the oldest and of course most dangerous villains to Superman, and plot-wise, I think he would make a lot of sense in a modern DCEU. Robots are doing backflips and parkour now as they deliver mail, so I'm sure it wouldn't take long for somebody to duct tape some kryptonite to it and so begin the most intense round of tag anybody has seen. John Corbin used to be a con man until a car crash fatally injured him. Good news is he was found by Professor Emmett Vale. Bad news is that Professor thinks that Superman was the beginning of an alien invasion, so he transformed John's brain into that of a cyborg powered by uranium. Nice. Hip replacement? Nope, you're a robot now. Enjoy. His first task upon waking up was of course to go after Superman, but it gets wild because once Metallo was given a more human look to go along with the kryptonite heart, he took out Professor Vale, his own creator. He didn't see a use for Vale after his upgrade, which that's pretty terrifying. I'm here for this plan. Just wrap some kryptonite around a pigeon and send him. That would also probably work too. Number 9. Bridgewater. His name is entirely different, but Bridgewater is the best translation we have. He first appeared in Superman Confidential issue 1. He was observing as Kal-El was launched towards Earth from that dying Krypton. He was a little too close to the action because after being caught in that explosion, Bridgewater was fused to a giant boulder made of kryptonite. So when he too arrived to Earth later, crash landed in Tibet, monks worshipped this physical form as a holy object. Of course, they're like the world's biggest gemstone, let's do it. But eventually, crime lord Anthony Gallo came along and wanted to control it. But Bridgewater used his powers to mentally control Gallo. How the tables have turned. He eventually met Superman in Metropolis, and that's when he offered Kal-El a chance to see his true heritage for the first time in his adult life. He explained his birth and what happened to Krypton to make it fall, but in turn, Superman now had to throw on a lead suit and fly Bridgewater's containment ore into the sun, finally freeing him from that prison. I can see Bridgewater being a villain for the most part of a DCEU film, and then in usual superhero fashion at the end, turns out he's just an alien in need. He was just misunderstood, just a classic misunderstood alien like E.T. And before we continue with this list, you want to go ahead and give us a thumbs up. That would be lovely. You nerds are the best. Now let's get right back to this video. Nice and quick. There you go. Number 8. Cyborg Superman. Hank Henshaw made his first appearance in Adventures of Superman issue 465. He was a scientist, astronaut, and team leader of the Excalibur crew. He was joined on this LexCorp space mission by his wife and 2 others. But when cosmic rays get to the crew in space, their powers are actually quite similar to the Fantastic Four, only like nightmare versions. Terry, Hank's wife, was essentially the Invisible Woman, and then Hank has his face melting off of him. It's actually really gross. It actually ended horribly for everybody but Terry, believe it or not. Superman saved her, and the others, it was far too late. But in Adventures of Superman issue 468, it was revealed that Hank lived through, well, download. You have to back up your consciousness. He transferred his consciousness to LexCorp's mainframe, and then he took over NASA's equipment and then beamed his mind into the birthing matrix, the same pod that carried Superman from Krypton. So he's like mentally going through iCloud. He's like Siri from hell, basically. So he was able to travel the cosmos and eventually learn about local life forms and their history as well. So he was super smart. He eventually came to the conclusion that Superman was evil and needed to be stopped. Classic. I mean, also, I don't blame him. He's like laser beaming buildings. I too kind of think he should be stopped. He recruited Mongol and planned his revenge, but after Superman died battling Doomsday, Hank claimed to be Superman Reborn. He looks just like him.
And it's 7. Parasite. The Raymond Maxwell Jensen version of the Parasite first appeared in Action Comics number 340 from 1966, and is basically like some weird form of mind melder that has the ability to temporarily absorb the life energy, superpowers, and knowledge of their victim. The character was actually created by Jim Shooter, who was 13 when he thought of the character. Following an encounter with the strange visitor, however, the Parasite's powers were enhanced and enabled him to retain the energy he takes for longer, as well as granting Jones, the next Parasite, the ability to shapeshift. He can now physically morph into his victims right down to their DNA, being able to access their memories, gain their natural abilities, and mimic their voice, which I think, is pretty damn dangerous. At least it only lasts for a certain length of time though. However, Parasite also absorbs the weaknesses of superpowered individuals, even if someone else he absorbs has an immunity to it. And at 6, Mr. Mxyzptlk. Mxyzptlk possesses reality warping powers with which he enjoys tormenting Superman, or just making life difficult, because he's like a little sibling. His portrayal has been varied, with him being an outright supervillain in some instances and an anti-hero in others. But in most of Mix's appearances in DC Comics, he can be stopped only by tricking him into saying or spelling his own name backwards, which sends him back to the 5th dimension that he calls home and keeps him there for at least 90 days. That's not even 3 months, bro. Come on. However, after Crisis on Infinite Earths, he was changed to having a new requirement that needed to be met for him to leave. That would change each story, such as Superman getting him to paint his own face blue. So Mix getting Superman to make Mix paint his face blue, like his own face. This is one of the few villains that actually uses Superman's other weakness, magic, against him, since most just resort to kryptonite. This guy has the ability to warp reality and do basically whatever he wants, and since he comes from the 5th dimension, he isn't bound by the laws of 3rd dimensional beings, whatever that means. But like, bro, what is with your name? Like, I get that it's supposed to be hard to say, so it's hard to say backwards, but like, come on. Cut a guy some slack. I talk about Five Nights at Freddy's all day. Okay, I don't have room in my brain for this. Halfway through, in at number 5, Bizarro. Being first introduced in Superboy number 68 from 1958, Bizarro was actually a teen at first. However, an adult version of the character was introduced in the Superman newspaper comic strip, but he was wearing a B on his chest instead of an S. However, in 1959, we saw an adult version of the character introduced into the Superman comic books, this time wearing an S in Action Comics number 254. Despite his complicated history though, Bizarro has all of the powers of Superman except reversed. So instead of heat vision, he has freeze vision, flame breath, vacuum breath. Imagine a freaking Bizarro vacuum. That would be blessed. Why hasn't anyone branded vacuums like that yet? Like, this is an untapped market. And yes, I do mean actual vacuums, you sickos. And his other abilities are also flipped, like being able to see through only lead. And Bizarro is strengthened by green kryptonite, which only makes things worse for normal soups. Am I right? While Bizarro never really seems to come out on top, does that mean that since everything for him is reversed that he's actually winning all the time? Because if that is the case, I don't know if he should be on this list, because in his mind technically he would be undefeated, right? And at 4, General Zod. General Zod was first introduced in Adventure Comics number 283 from 1961 and is also a Kryptonian like Superman, therefore has the same powers, which makes him a pretty powerful adversary. It's like the whole conundrum of if you fought yourself, who would win? Or would you just keep fighting until you both collapse from exhaustion? However, what he has over Kal-El is experience. Being the leader of the Kryptonian military, Zod is an expert tactician and is trained in hand-to-hand combat. And while yes, they both pack a punch, knowing how to fight or predict your opponent's moves is also critical to winning. However, Zod's powers are often inferior to those of Superman, due to Superman being exposed to the yellow sun over the course of his entire life, while Zod typically only gets it for a short period of time before being returned to the Phantom Zone. This greater power combined with the superior control and experience with it gives Superman an edge over Zod's actual like fighting skills, so that he does end up losing more commonly than not, if ever. So sorry, Zod. Getting close to the end, and at number 3, Brainiac. First introduced in Action Comics number 242 from 1958, Brainiac is one of Superman's greatest villains and has a personal connection with the hero, since he shrunk and stole the capital city of Krypton, known as Kandor, and in some continuities is even responsible for Krypton's destruction. Brainiac's most consistent power is his 12th level intellect, allowing calculation abilities, enhanced memory, and advanced understanding of mechanical engineering, bioengineering, physics, and other theoretical and applied sciences, as well as extensive knowledge of various alien tech, because of course he does. And while that sounds confusing, we as a 21st century society are considered to have a 9th level intellect. Or as his post-crisis version explains, he can process the sort of knowledge over 490 octodectillion beings could, which is absolutely monstrous, okay? Just so you can see it, that's about 490 with another 59 zeros after it people worth of human brain power that he uses on a regular basis. So yeah, he's definitely a smart cookie, but not the one that they use in Squid Game. Is that still a popular thing? Penultimately, in number 2, Darkseid. Darkseid was first introduced in Forever People number 1 and is the tyrannical ruler of Apocalypse and leader of the New Gods. As a new god, however, Darkseid is among the most powerful beings in the DC universe. His most well-known and utilized ability derives from the Omega effect, which allows him to blast Omega beams from his eyes. Omega beams are an intense form of basically heated energy that can either act as a concussive force to subdue an opponent, or as a disintegrating agent capable of eradicating organisms or objects from existence. Awesome. Some superpowered beings, such as Superman, have proven resistant to the beams, although Superman does it with a great deal of pain. The Omega beams can also resurrect fallen beings that have previously been killed by them, and Darkseid will use this sometimes if he wants to punish people who fail him, but they're too valuable to kill at the moment. Darkseid also has pinpoint control over this energy, and his unwavering aim allows him to just control the memes to go wherever he goes. They can travel in straight lines, they can bend, they can curve around corners, even pass through matter and other forms of energy, which just makes these already horrifying things absolutely terrifying. And finally, in at number 1, Doomsday. First appearing in Superman Man of Steel number 17 in 1992, Doomsday was invented to be a beast that would kill Superman, since writers were growing concerned about how other villains relied too much on their tech or brain power to try to beat Superman. This was probably also to show that yes, even Superman can die, to give other heroes I guess something to fear, or I guess the readers something to fear. Doomsday is depicted as a monstrous, genetically engineered being from the depths of prehistoric Krypton. His creator imbued him with a few feelings, mostly hate and the desire for destruction, which, let's face it, same. But this led to him destroying worlds and eventually finding Earth, where he met Superman. Doomsday is the one who killed Superman in Kelly's favorite The Death of Superman storyline, and the big thing with Doomsday is his ability to evolve. Doomsday gradually becomes more invulnerable, if not injured beyond his ability to recover. Superman once used a sound gun to greatly discomfort him, but Doomsday's auditory canals closed up, making him impervious to the weapon next time. So basically anything that hurts or kills him basically won't do that a second time, which is absolutely absurd and definitely makes him one of Superman's greatest foes. And you know, he's the only one who killed him, so yeah, that's a number 1. And at 10, Lex Luthor. While you can't really have a list of Superman villains without Lex, the character isn't all that powerful when you look at it. Like sure, he's popular among fans and runs a business, so he has some pull in society and whatnot, but in reality he's just the dude with mommy issues that is just jealous of Superman. Sure, at some points he may wear and pilot a mech suit that gives him advanced weaponry and whatnot, but otherwise he's just a guy who pays other guys to fight for him. Which I mean, like, in a sense money is power, but like when compared to other people on this list, and even compared to Superman, Lex doesn't really have much going for him, aside from maybe a little bit of kryptonite. But Lex is constantly losing to Supes as well, which only makes him angrier, and that's just funny as hell to me. We love it when a jerk gets mad because he didn't get what he wants. Lex is kind of like a brat, you know, like the kind of brat that will team up with their parents to take out the town's crazy dude if they need to. Like, you know what I mean? Like, any kid's movie basically has one of these characters. Spiderwick Chronicles, okay? The big sister is pretty much like this. She's like that until she gets her leg bit by a goblin and realizes that her brothers ain't crazy. That's Lex. And at 9, Steppenwolf. Because everyone prefers the theatrical version of Justice League, right? Steppenwolf was introduced in New Gods number 7 from 1972 and is a new god and military general from the planet Apocalypse. Steppenwolf is the brother of Hegra and therefore the maternal uncle of Darkseid, which is like a really weird family dynamic given that he is commonly depicted as Darkseid's subordinate, commanding his nephew's army of parademons in conflict against Superman and the Justice League. In the theatrical version of the Justice League movie, Steppenwolf is actually the main villain instead of Darkseid. However, you shouldn't discount the dark side of the moon's uncle, because Steppenwolf is immortal and has vast superhuman strength, speed, and endurance, capable of lifting up to 10,000 tons and jumping huge distances easily. He has superhuman reflexes and a high degree of invulnerability, which increases with his battle armor and allows him to resist most physical and energetic attacks. So while yes, they did manage to defeat him, it was still quite the battle. And at 8, Metallo. John Corbin is usually featured as either a willing volunteer for a surgery or a mortally wounded test subject that needs this surgery to save his life. Metallo first appeared in the Superman comic strip storyline The Menace of Metallo, which ran from the 15th of December 1958 to the 4th of April 1959. This procedure, whether willing or not, ends up turning John into a cyborg powered by a kryptonite heart, which I think you know what that means. While usually working as another supervillain's lackey, Metallo has the strength to go head to head with the Man of Steel, especially given that he has the strength of Superman and then weakens him with his heart when he's nearby. Metallo's robot body offers him a high degree of protection from physical and energy attacks as well. Among his enhanced abilities, he also no longer needs to eat, sleep, or breathe, and isn't that the dream? His brain is also sealed away inside a shielded alloy skull that has its own power supply, so trust me, I know. Sentient robots that want to kill are definitely not something to be trifled with. At least the timeline for Metallo isn't all that complicated.
Number 7, Kaio the Trickster. Kaio is an ancient trickster who is similar to Marvel's Loki and is also associated with the concept of chaos. She often causes trouble just because she can and because she is curious to see what will happen. Kaio was responsible for transporting both Superman and Batman through time to an alternate world where they met alternate versions of themselves and were forced to fight. She often wipes the memories of those she meddles with, leaving them with no knowledge of her existence or what she did to them. Kyle first appeared in Batman/Superman issue number 2. Number 6. Leviathan. Leviathan was another mysterious villain of Superman's for a good amount of time during DC's Leviathan event. He was the leader of Leviathan, an anti-capitalist organization who seeks to dismantle society and reshape it through replacing the world's leaders. Basically, it's a terrorist organization. Writer Brian Michael Bendis later revealed that this mysterious figure would actually end up being not a new character, but instead a character who was well established in DC canon, although for a while we thought it was a new character. The big reveal would be that Leviathan was Mark Shaw, aka Manhunter, who had joined the organization and organized a coup to overthrow its leader, Talia al Ghul. After successfully doing so, Shaw became the new leader, taking up the codename Leviathan. And that's who we know him as now, Leviathan, no longer Manhunter. Number 5. Ulysses. Ulysses first appeared in Superman Volume 3, Issue 32, in the New 52. Ulysses himself was actually Neil Quinn from Earth. He was sent off-world to the 4th dimension in an attempt to save his life by his parents, who actually thought Earth would soon perish, much like Superman's parents did with him. He returned to Earth years later with superpowers acquired from the 4th dimension that were similar to Superman's, and discovered that Earth still exists. It actually hadn't perished. Ulysses was convinced by the Machinist to betray Earth when he was shown the potential for evil that humanity had. He then attempts to sacrifice 6 million humans in an effort to power his adoptive home, the 4th dimension, also known as the Great World. Number 4. Blank. Blank was first introduced in Superman Lois and Clark issue number 3. He is a psionic supervillain who posed a great threat to Superman post-Flashpoint, despite his powerful telepathic, telekinetic, and pyrokinetic abilities. However, Superman was able to restrain him until Blank was broken out by Cyborg Superman, who recruited him for his new Superman Revenge Squad. Number 3. Mr. Oz / Jor-El. Jor-El first appeared in the New Earth continuity in Man of Steel number 1 in the 80s. While this might not make him a new character, seeing him reimagined as a villain in the Prime Earth continuity was new. He made his first appearance in that continuity in Action Comics Volume number 2, Issue number 3. More recently, he has been known as Mr. Oz, who is a somewhat villainous and mysterious character who is seen interfering with Superman's life. Jor-El adopted this name after an unknown force transported him to Earth, allowing him to witness the cruelty of man. Since then, he adopted the name Mr. Oz and set out to prove to his son Kal-El that humans are evil beings who are unworthy of his protection. His master plan and who he was finally revealed in the story arc The Oz Effect. Number 2. Rogol-Zar. Rogol-Zar was created by Brian Michael Bendis and Jim Lee and first appeared in Action Comics issue 1000. What an issue to come in on. 1,000. That's a lot of issues. Rogol-Zar is an alien warrior who claimed to be responsible for the destruction of Krypton. He hates Kryptonians. Rogol is also strong enough to take on both Superman and Supergirl at the same time, and is a very powerful foe. He has been temporarily defeated and was held in a permanent stasis to prevent him from harming anybody else. But I'm sure this isn't the last that we'll see of this new mighty foe. He's just too powerful. Plus, if you destroy Krypton, if you make that claim, probably gonna be around for a while. Number 1, Dr. Fate. Wait, what? Isn't Dr. Fate a good guy? Also, isn't he originally from the 1940s? Yes and yes, but in a new issue of Superman, issue 24 of volume 5, a magical storm is brewing to take on the Man of Steel himself. Superman is nigh invincible with only a few weaknesses to speak of, but despite having few, these weaknesses are pretty massive, pretty mighty for Kal-El, one being a weakness to magic. We've got a synopsis and cover art for issue 24 that reveals Superman will have a new villain on the rise who is pitting Supes against Dr. Fate. So while I'm sure Dr. Fate won't actually be going full villain and this will be a misunderstanding, this still means that Superman could have a very powerful and mysterious foe indeed rising up. Perhaps one that is also based in the realm of magic, which is pretty crazy, as this could mean that they could very well be one of the more powerful foes that Superman has yet to face in over 80 years of comics. But only time will tell what is really happening in this story where Superman takes on Dr. Fate. And you'll have to wait till at least June of 2020 to find out, assuming there aren't more comic book delays for that title.
Number 10. The Dummy. The Dummy was created in the 1940s and has faced Superman countless times. Now, he isn't just strictly a Superman villain, he has faced other superheroes as well. He's quite intelligent and uses a gun quite a bit. Not much else is known about his backstory, since it was never really revealed if he was actually a literal ventriloquist dummy or just something else. Number 9, Hobby Robber. So there isn't much about Hobby Robber either, which seems like a trend on this list. But he made an appearance in 1944 and was created by Jerry Siegel and Sam Citrin. So his history of Superman is simple, but very strange. Clark Kent apparently has a rare clock collection, and Hobby Robber steals it. Yep, it's pretty weird, but in the original multiverse he gets erased by Crisis on Infinite Earths. So I guess that clock collection disappeared as well? I guess we'll never know. Number 8, Klakok. Okay, I am very sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, but you know what, we'll just move on. He is a villain and has the ability to grow double his size. He was a part of Superman's Revenge Squad at one point. Yes, apparently that was a thing. He obviously has this vendetta against Superman and has fought him from time to time. He hasn't appeared in too much throughout the comics, but being on a squad that has had members at different times like Bizarro, Parasite, Metallo, Lex Luthor, and even Superman himself. Yes, Superman himself was at a time part of the Superman Revenge Squad, but Superman was only part of it to help take down evil Kryptonians that were, led by none other than General Zod, so I guess it makes sense.
Number 7, Brainiac. Another rival of Superman, Brainiac made his first appearance in Action Comics 242. Now this guy is a very specific villain. He would love to steal cities. Yeah, you heard me, not wallets or purses, cities. He took Metropolis at one point. I mean, this guy is just insane. He would use this thing called a shrinking ray, which does exactly what you would think it does, and he would take cities back to his planet. He just has a collection of cities. What a weird, try rocks. It's a bit more fun. Vril Dox. He started his days as a scientist, and then one day he successfully cloned himself because he needed an assistant, and who better to hire than yourself? There you go. He built the spaceship next and then traveled the cosmos, gaining knowledge and studying alien organisms with the help of his robot drones, but during these travels he came across Krypton while General Zod was still running the show, so he shrunk down the entire city of Kandor and studied it in his ship. Which is also so funny to me. He's just checking out like cities and alleys. He's like, oh yes, I see. Google Earth, my friend, Google Earth. I don't know, it'll save lives. He made a remote scout unit that believed it was the original Vril Dox, and then it traveled to Earth and took over the body of sideshow mentalist Milton Fine, whose stage name was, you guessed it, Brainiac. Number 6, Parasite. Rudy Jones. He first appeared in Firestorm Volume 2, Issue 58. He was once a janitor at the Pittsburgh branch of Star Labs, so naturally, he was involved in an accident that changed his life forever. Classic janitor in a comic book storyline. He's like, whoa, it's pretty wet here. And then he's like made of plasma. Classic. Darkseid remembered the Parasite who existed before Crisis on Infinite Earths when it was Maxwell Jensen, and he simply wanted Jones to become the new version of that. Under his influence, of course. He made Rudy open up a waste container thinking there was something valuable and awesome inside, but instead what he got was exposure to radiation, so he was changed into a bald, green-skinned, well, you guessed it, Parasite. Absolutely. Number 5, Hellspawn. Originally a supervillain from Wildstar Comics before Jim Lee brought him into DC Comics in the New 52, he made his first appearance in Wildcats back in 1992, but come Superman Volume 3, Issue 7, Lord Hellspawn made his arrival to DC Comics. And he's so scary. The Daemonites were developing autoimmune disorders, so he was desperate for a solution, this alien dude. And of course, he was also a hint of crazy, so his own people put him in a prison. He gained power from a blue flame on the moon Europa, and then in turn gained a handful of followers. He gained these amazing abilities, metamorphosis, phasing, super speed, super strength. He also looks terrifying and he's immortal, so that sure helps in a heated exchange. So he was locked up in this prison called the Eye, which later became the headquarters of Team Stormwatch, which was the planetary defense unit. Now when Harry Tanner set off an explosion, cut to 4,000 years later, that part of the cell launched and crashed into Earth in the Himalayas. That dude from Monsters Inc.'s like, welcome to the... No, not you, you're terrifying. No yellow snow cones for you, sir. Hellspawn later abducted Superman, they got in a heated battle, but of course Superman saved the day. We could do for this guy in the DCEU, another crashed alien, the people of Earth would be like, who is it now? Can someone deal with this guy, please? He's on fire, he's blue, he's on fire. Number 4, Super Doom. Coming from Earth 45, this Superman was also a project gone wrong. He first appeared in Action Comics Volume 2, Issue 9, back when Jimmy Olsen created a machine that turns thoughts into reality, which sounds scary when you think about it. You're like, I don't know if I want to do it. No one read my stuff. The gang decided to make a robot Superman out of this tech. They ended up selling this device to Overcorp, which made it into Superman the Last Night of Tomorrow, aka the monstrous Super Doom. It just sounded like a bad idea. Even as I was saying it out loud, I'm like, oh, come on, Jimmy. Overcorp used used him to take over the planet, but still, that wasn't enough. Super Doom entered the bleed space where he would then search the multiverse for all of its creators, destroying planets and other versions of Superman like Optiman of Earth 36 or Superman of Earth 42, but eventually came to Earth 23 and had to go toe-to-toe with their Superman, President Calvin Harris. I'm all for this guy. We're gonna get some DCEU multiverse stuff going on. He could totally slip in. Number 3, Toyman. This guy we saw in live action before in Smallville, so there's hope that he'll make an appearance in the DCEU. Toyman, aka Winslow Schott, is considered a mechanical genius who, yes, is also a little mad. His first appearance was in the Golden Age back in Action Comics issue 64. On the cover, he's hopping over Superman by using a pogo stick. So if we're bringing him into live action, we need this scene to happen. The theater would applause, it would go nuts. He first designed an army of toy soldiers that actually shot knockout gas. Toy Story, but make it a horror film. There you go. The second version of Toyman is my personal favorite. Jack Nimble took Winslow's spot in the 70s after he retired. His outfit was much better. He dressed like a jester and he flew a little plane. A plane that he was far too big for. He kept his legs outside of the plane on the wings. He's just man-spreading like a true villain. Number 2, Mr. Mxyzptlk. This man of mystery made his first dazzling appearance in Superman Volume 2, Issue 11. He is awesome. Now at first sight, he seems like an ordinary dude. He's in the office with Lois and Clark, he's the new guy in the office, and right as Lois and Clark are gearing up to leave for their lunch, that random dude starts to rub Lois's feet in the office. He's just rubbing feet, just the foot guy in the office. He has a coffee in one hand and a foot in the other. Normal office behavior, so weird. But it's even weirder when Lois agreed to go get lunch with that guy. She bailed on Superman, which is insane. She went with Foot Rub Ronnie. They go to lunch and they come back 4 hours later, which is concerning. And then at this point, Lois still doesn't know what happened or what anything about this man. She doesn't know how much time has passed. She's oblivious to a gorilla attack that's happening behind her. She's in a daze, something's wrong. And then he turns Lois into a mannequin, like an I Am Legend. So what's happening? This is terrifying. This man is not into foot rubs or he doesn't work at this office. He's actually an imp from the 5th dimension. His real name doesn't even translate into Earth's languages, so we call him Mr. Mixie. He can manipulate anything and everything. He is nigh omnipotent. I think a 5th dimension imp would actually be great for the cosmic elements of the DCEU. Like I said, Marvel's getting all trippy with their cosmic TV show, Disney Plus shows. They can do this if they want, I'm just saying. Number 1, Manchester Black. Making his very first appearance in Action Comics issue 775, he's an English dude who ran a team of anti-heroes called the Elite. He had a horrible childhood, his parents were awful to him, so he grew up believing that the best way to handle a villain was just to take them out. Brutal. Little different than Bruce Wayne, just a tad. Superman, of course, wasn't on board with this level of violence, so he interfered with the Elite after they had started violently taking down their enemies. Manchester Black used his telekinesis abilities to give Superman a stroke, so he was evil and actually pretty powerful. He can read minds and manipulate them as well. Then after Manchester's death in Action Comics 796, his legacy still continued as his sister, Vera Black, took over the Elite.
Number 10, Glenn Morgan. Glenn, or Mr. Metropolis as he is sometimes known, was a villain that New 52 Superman came up against. He ended up being targeted by both Superman, both as Kal-El and Clark Kent, due to crimes he had been involved in. After being dropped off the side of a tall building, he was forced to confess to his involvement, but managed to avoid going to prison. He spoke out against Superman as an alien threat to planet Earth and managed to attract the attention of General Sam Lane and Lex Luthor, who then became obsessed with trapping Superman. Number 9, Super Doom. This villain first appeared in Action Comics Volume 2, Issue number 9. Super Doom is a villain who was actually created by the non-powered team of Clark Kent, Lois Lane, and Jimmy Olsen, in an unfortunate partnership with the evil corporation Overcorp. Super Doom was supposed to be, for Lois, Jimmy, and Clark, the savior of humanity. They envisioned him as a hero named Superman, who would be created using a device they invented that turned thoughts into reality. However, instead, their Superman became corrupted and turned evil and set out on a mission to destroy every other Superman in the multiverse, becoming known as Super Doom. Calvin Ellis, the Superman of Earth 23, with the help of his Earth's Lex Luthor, were the two who ended up putting a stop to Super Doom the first time around, though eventually Super Doom would be redeemed and would later be transformed into a hero. But when he was introduced, he was a villain. Number 8, Wraith. Wraith first appeared in Superman Unchained number 1 and was created by Scott Snyder and Jim Lee. Wraith is an acronym for William Rudolph's Ace in the Hole. He was introduced in the story Superman Unchained as the original Superman, an alien who was sent as a gift to Earth from an alien race as a response to a mathematical equation that Earth had sent out into space, which that alien race had intercepted. Wraith was used by the military as a weapon and tool in World War II, and continued to be used by them ever since. Wraith, however, as a super being, belonged to the US military, and of course was only loyal to the USA, and ended up turning on Superman when Kal-El came into conflict with General Sam Lane. Wraith was also stronger than Superman, who turned to the Justice League for help in defeating Wraith, which ultimately only made Wraith expand his wrath to that of the Justice League as well.
Number 7. Sand Superman. Sand Superman got his powers by a combination of a few things. Superman's powers, sand, and psychic energy, which came from a dimension called Quorum. So, yeah, that's how we got this Man of Sand. See what I did there? He is quite the powerful foe, and if they are close, he can drain the Man of Steel's powers. The other crazy thing about how these two are linked is that the planet will blow up if they have any physical contact, since he can drain and consume Superman's powers. He even sort of turned good, wanting to save lives, instead of hurting them. Number 6. Mr. Zed. Mr. Zed is immortal and quite fascinated with famous people. So what he likes to do is travel, through a time to capture famous people and his crystal, and that is on top of his cane, basically capturing their souls. He also has the power of hypnotizing people and resurrection. Of course, he became fascinated with Superman. When attempting to try and capture Superman into his crystal, he is unsuccessful due to where he came from and how powerful the Man of Steel is. In the end, his crystal explodes, freeing most of the souls that he captured throughout time. He has faced off with him other times as well, whether it was in the past or the present day version of himself. Number 5. Master Jailer. The Master Jailer, aka Death Trap, worked for Star Labs in creating cells for superpowered individuals. He is incredibly smart and was asked to try and figure out a way to hold Superman in the cell, but proved he couldn't do it. That didn't stop his obsession with trying to figure out how he could one day trap the Man of Steel in one of his cells, though. He found out Superman's identity, Clark Kent, and wanted to try and go after his friends as a way to get him to cooperate. He also teamed up with some of Superman's longtime foes, but he was never able to fully capture the Man of Steel like he always wanted. Number 4. Atomic Skull. So Atomic Skull was created back in the 1970s and has faced Superman numerous times. So basically, Joseph Martin got hit by a gene bomb and became Atomic Skull. His powers include super strength, gives off huge amounts of radiation, and has a flaming radiation type skull for his head. Now, as scary as this guy is, these powers definitely took their toll on Joseph as he started getting brain damage. The damage sort of led to Joseph to change his persona to Atomic Skull. He is known to be quite erratic and can be quite violent due to some hallucinations. Number 3. Cancer. This is definitely an interesting villain and one for sure I definitely had not heard of at all. So somewhere down the line, Superman developed cancerous cells. When they removed the actual cells from Superman's body, what do? What do you know? We got our villain Cancer. Yes, he came to life from the removal of these cancerous cells in Superman's body. Since he came from Superman, he has most of Superman's powers, as well as being able to completely destroy a human body with just a touch from him. Since he is connected to Superman, he has weird issues about him being his father and whatnot. So, it's a little bit strange. Number 2, Amazing Grace. Amazing Grace was created in the 1980s and has the power of mind control, and with that power, she can manipulate others. Amazing Grace works with a villain known as Darkseid as his agent. So she basically lives amongst the people of Apokolips and tries to root out who are the most unloyal to him and who would betray him in an instant. She finds these people and basically betrays them once they show their true colors. She has done this with Superman in the sense, by luring him in to save her when really she did not need saving at all. It was just a ploy to manipulate him and to make him believe that he was Darkseid's son, which he actually believed. In the end, Orion, Darkseid's true son who they were waging war on, used the Mother Box to give Superman his mind back. Number 1, Super Menace. Super Menace is definitely one of the most out there villains that you probably haven't heard of. The origin of Super Menace is that when Superman got sent to Earth in a spaceship from Krypton, his spaceship collided with another alien spaceship, which was Super Menace's. What happened from that collision was Superman's spaceship got copied and duplicated into this other one, creating the persona Super Menace. He landed with parents that definitely were no Martha or Jonathan Kent, and instead of growing up loved, he grew up in a not so good household where he ultimately became a villain. the super menace.
Starting off our list at number 10, we have the diabolical Parasite. That's right, for the first entry on a list about power, we've got the supervillain whose entire gimmick is sucking it up. Born under the name of Rudolph Rudy Jones, the Parasite was born after accidentally ingesting a toxic substance at LexCorp that was eventually revealed to be the byproduct of extracted kryptonite radiation. This gave Rudy an unstoppable hunger and the ability to grow stronger by absorbing the life energy and superpowers of anyone unfortunate enough to be his victim. The villain is impulsively drawn to those with the most power, and while he was initially more of a foil for the DC hero Firestorm, Superman's sun-based powers and incredible strength makes him the theoretical perfect feast for the Parasite. And judging by the amount of time that Superman has had to be saved at the last moment from Parasite to prevent himself from being completely sucked dry of his life energy, Parasite is definitely one of the more dangerous and hungry villains that Clark Kent should watch out for. Coming in at number 9, we have the one and only Bloodsport. Most well known for recently starring in James Gunn's The Suicide Squad, Bloodsport was a young man who avoided his draft to Vietnam and fled to Canada, leaving his brother to die in his place. Driven mad by this unexpected turn of events, Bloodsport became an extremely talented mercenary who then became nearly unstoppable when he was gifted a device that allowed him to instantly summon any weapon he could imagine directly into his hands. Using this new gift, Bloodsport was nearly able to kill Superman by creating a gun that fired kryptonite bullets, a talent that leaves him pretty high up on the list of people considered dangerous by good old Supes. Speaking of deadly kryptonite-themed villains, at number 8 we've got the disturbingly gross monstrosity known as Cancer. But, spelled with a K because kryptonite. Cancer's origin story begins when Superman is poisoned with modified kryptonite by General Zod, leading to the growth of a kryptonite tumor within his body. While Superman's life was able to be saved by the efforts of Dr. Emil Hamilton and the rest of the Superman family, the discarded tumor was stolen again by General Zod's forces and mutated into a full-sized, xenomorph-looking creature with a life-killing aura and abandonment issues over how its father, Superman, forgot about it. Cancer is capable of wounding and breaking the skin of any Kryptonian, as he's essentially kryptonite itself in the flesh. And if you're literally poisoned to your archenemy, I'd say that Superman had better watch out.
Number 7. Bloodsport. Now, unfortunately, a cool name doesn't always make for a cool villain. We've seen a few of Lex Luthor's henchmen take up the name Bloodsport, but let's focus on the first, Robert Dubois. Dubois suffered a mental breakdown after his brother had taken his place in the Vietnam War and became a quadruple amputee, resulting in Dubois spending 12 years bouncing between various psychiatric hospitals. Somehow, an agent of Lex Luthor persuades Dubois that Superman is to blame for all his troubles, causing him to adopt the name Bloodsport and go on a needless rampage in downtown Metropolis. Equipped with basic hand-to-hand combat skills and some unnamed tech from Luthor that allowed him to summon any weapon he desired from a remote location, Dubois caused some serious damage before being subdued after his brother confronted him. He spent several years in Stryker Island's penitentiary before Alex Trent, the person who took up the name Bloodsport after him, was brought to his attention. Believing it was the healthiest way for the two to work out their problems, the warden set up a boxing match between the two with Superman as the referee. However, things got out of hand pretty quickly and a riot broke out that allowed Dubois to escape. His freedom didn't last very long though, as he was quickly shot down by a prison guard. Check out his story for yourself, starting with 1987 Superman Volume 2, Number 4. Number 6. Bruno Mannheim. Bruno Ugly Mannheim had the honor, or I don't know, maybe dishonor depending on how you look at it, of being introduced not in a Superman comic, but in the spin-off series Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen. Mannheim starts off as a pretty run-of-the-mill stereotypical gangster, trying to just stake a claim for himself in Metropolis, but eventually morphs into something very different and ultimately confusing. With no real powers unless you consider greed and brutality to be special, Mannheim was beefed up by DC when he was made leader of the Intergang, a worldwide crime syndicate that answers to no one other than Darkseid. Basically, Mannheim is this interesting amalgamation of some of the best villains out there, as he is known to go full-blown Hannibal Lecter sometimes, eating his enemies / subordinates that disobey him, and he also flip-flops between being a super genius like Lex Luthor to an overwhelming powerhouse like Darkseid. Yeah, I know, it's all a little bit confusing, so why not check him out for yourself so you can make some more sense of his character, starting with his first appearance in 1971's Superman's pal, Jimmy Olsen, number 139. Number 5, The Prankster. Once the extremely popular host of the Uncle Oswald show, Oswald Loomis became the prankster after his show was cancelled and ultimately ended his career in comedy. His first assault on Metropolis was an all-out barrage of practical jokes that ended in his surrender. After a while, Loomis resurfaced with a much younger and athletic body thanks to selling his soul to Lord Satanus, and this changed everything. With a more serious personality and affinity for dangerous tricks, Loomis basically became a slightly less twisted version of the Joker, and his only goal was to make the world laugh via his own twisted ways. When Metropolis was taken over by Brainiac 13, he took advantage of all the futuristic tech available and upgraded his existing gadgets, which proved to be pretty effective against even the likes of Superman. However, this was probably because the Man of Steel was suffering from kryptonite poisoning at the time and did not have full access to his powers. Skip ahead a little bit to when the Joker took over the world and we meet a slightly altered Halloween mask wearing prankster who acts as Joker City's exorcist, whose goal is to expel the evil from those who still believe in science. Thankfully for everyone out there, he was eventually apprehended by Superman and taken to Belle Reve to serve his time for all his crimes. Having made his first appearance all the way back in 1988 Superman Volume 2 number 16, give his story a read for yourself and let me know what you think in the comments below. Number 4, Lois Lane Robot. On New Earth and during his quest for the power he lost in Blackest Night, Lex Luthor decided it was a good idea to take a Brainiac probe stored in LexCorp and a sample of Lois Lane's DNA to create a robotic version of her that would serve as his quote-unquote conscience. Unfortunately for him, before he was able to complete the programming, he was held hostage by some bandits under the control of Mr. Mind, and he himself was put into a mental illusion. The Lois Lane robot was functional enough though to activate all of its weapon systems, allowing it to take out all of the thugs and bring Luthor back into reality. Armed to the brim with state-of-the-art technology and weapons, her robotic android body allows her to repair any damage received, and also gives her the ability to fly alongside super strength, durability, and speed. Now, not long after their run-in with Mr. Mind, Luthor, Deathstroke, and Lanebot head to Antarctica to find a black orb that is somehow related to the Black Power Ring energy. The effects of this orb were enough to cause Deathstroke and his men to completely lose control and attack one another. However, Lanebot was not affected as she is inorganic. That was the last time we saw the Lois Lane robot, so until they grace the comic book pages once again, check them out in their first appearance in 2010's Action Comics number 890. Number 3, Terraman. Tobias Manning, aka Terraman, was once a businessman who one day realized just how much damage he was causing to the Earth and its environment. With his newfound conscience, Manning took up a personal vendetta against any company that was causing damage to the environment. Using weapons that focused on turning the environment around his enemies against them, he has caused some serious damage in the name of the Earth, and that earned him a spot on the Secret Society of Villains during the events of Infinite Crisis. Even after this catastrophic event, Terraman continued his nefarious ways by hijacking a plane over the Middle East. Thanks to Black Adam, he escaped both harm and capture for this crime. However, in hindsight, teaming up with Black Adam probably wasn't the best idea for him, because when Black Adam later appeared to address the media in front of Kahndaq's New York embassy, he ripped Terraman in half with no warning, and that was the end of this nature-loving villain until he was resurrected during the events of the Blackest Night. Why not give his story a read for yourself, starting with his first appearance all the way back in 1990's Superman Volume 2, number 46. Number 2, Hellspawn. Although he was originally created as the nemesis of the Wildcats in the Wildstorm universe, Hellspawn made his way onto the villain roster for Superman when that universe was brought into the DC universe in the New 52 relaunch. As a Daemonite, Hellspawn possesses a ridiculous amount of powers thanks to his alien physiology, such as, but definitely not limited to, chronokinesis, accelerated healing, and telepathy, and when combined with his Akurian host body, he is shown to possess super strength and speed that are able to outmatch even the Man of Steel himself. Hellspawn made his first documented move against humanity by trying to start a nuclear war between the most powerful nations on Earth in order to allow humanity to destroy itself so the planet would be empty for the Daemonites. However, this plan didn't really pan out as he was stopped by Team 1 and Mr. Majestic. In the rebooted Wildstorm universe, Hellspawn is now a super evolved living hive mind because apparently when the number of Daemonites reaches a certain number, a central mind is created. Hellspawn now has the knowledge and intelligence of every member of the entire Daemonite race, and its synthetic body is a rad looking mix of flesh, metal, and fire. Thanks to this, he has moved into a league of his own when it comes to power, however we are still waiting to see it all in action. Now I did have to skip over a lot of cool stuff regarding this character, so check out his story for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 1992's Wildcats number 1. And coming in at number 1, we have Conduit. Kenny Braverman was, funnily enough, born on the same day that Superman's ship arrived on Earth. His fate was not exactly as lucky as our Man of Steel's. While his parents were on the way to the hospital, they ended up having to pull over to the side of the road due to the heavy storm, and he was born curbside, incredibly close to Clark's ship, and the exposure to the kryptonite caused some side effects that would manifest later in life. All throughout their younger years, Clark and Kenny were rivals, competing in everything from sports to girls, and this probably caused some serious self-esteem issues for Kenny because Clark always seemed to come out on top. After high school, Kenny went on to join the CIA and grew more and more reckless as his dormant abilities started to change his personality. Turns out Kenny's body is basically a living conduit for all energy, and it can process, manipulate, and even generate forms of energy in many destructive ways. Upon realizing this, Kenny took up the mantle of conduit and decided it was finally time to get his revenge on Clark. However, all of his attempts seemed to fail. Later confronted by Superman, Kenny deduced that Clark and the Man of Steel were one and the same, which was perfect for him because they were literally the only people he wanted to kill. So, he set all his sights on getting rid of Superman. Kenny manages to catch Superman and traps him in a mock version of Smallville, and the two face off one-on-one in a replica of their childhood football stadium. Unfortunately for Kenny, he succumbed to his madness and supercharged himself with kryptonite energy, effectively overloading his powers and killing him in the process.
Number 10. Parasite. First appearing in Firestorm Volume 2 in 1987, Parasite is a twisted, energy-sucking, vampire-like beast who feeds on energy to live. He absorbs the life force of mortals, leaving behind a withered, empty husk. Originally, his need to absorb was satiated with regular civilians, but up against a foe like Superman, his absorption also allows him to sap the powers and memories of his victims. This means he absorbs Superman's powers, but also becomes more deadly every time he goes up against the superhero. He also keeps the knowledge he absorbs during these encounters, meaning he is aware of Superman's secret identity. One interesting aspect of his power, he can only sustain a certain amount of superpowers at one time, or else previous powers will be disabled. This process causes him to go through body changes and power fluctuation. You know, like when you teach a new move to your Pokemon. If that wasn't enough, in his early origin, he had a wife and family he could never touch again, adding a tragic emotional element to this epic villain. Number 9. Metallo. John Corbin was a critically injured man, saved from death by a scientist named Emmett Vale in an experiment that turned him into a cyborg. The scientist was obsessed with the idea that Superman was leading an alien invasion, so when he happened across to John, dying from injuries sustained in a car crash, he takes him back to his lab and he puts his brain into a cyborg body powered by uranium. He then tasks him with killing Superman, and John becomes Metallo, named after the alloy his new form is made with. The uranium core is later replaced with a kryptonite heart to help him kill Superman. With the ability to shoot destructive kryptonite blasts, Metallo knows how to keep Superman busy. At one point, he sells his soul to a demon to upgrade his powers even further. He has incredible abilities granted by his cybernetic body, including enhanced senses and accelerated probability, allowing him to perform quick maths, rapidly processing to predict the most probable outcome of any given situation down to the second. This dude has got a serious hard drive. Hey Nerd Squad, if you like our videos and you want to see more, please take a second to hit that like button, really helps us out. Number 8. Mongol. Mongol first appeared in Adventures of Superman in 1989. He's an evil alien dictator, the tyrannical overlord of War World, an artificial satellite that travels the galaxy collecting slaves for gladiator-style combat tournaments. Superman is picked up and brought to War World, where he wins again and again until he's pitted up against Draga, the undisputed champion of War World. This place is crazy. It's like Rome mixed with WWE, and Superman is Stone Cold Steve Austin. After the Man of Steel defeats the champ, Mongol is not pleased and he teleports down to face off against Superman himself. He eventually knocks Superman unconscious, but rather than instantly killing him while he has the chance, he chains Superman up and prepares to execute Draga, the former champ. Superman breaks out of his bonds and fights back, but Mongol almost blasts Superman into oblivion with his ray blaster on his chest. Superman is saved, however, when a mysterious being named Cleric teleports him off to safety. Mongol nearly defeats Superman, and that lands him here at our number 8 spot. Coming in at number 7, Funny Face. We meet Funny Face in Superman 19 in 1942. Making him possibly the oldest villain on this list. In his story, Case of the Funny Paper Crimes, he brings some villains to life from a comic strip, including Machine Gun Mike and the Black Raider, and he sends these guys out to rob the stores of Metropolis in a super dastardly evil scheme, just Go out there and rob everything, you guys. Superman takes them on one at a time, eventually figuring out what's going on and that they've come from the funny pages. While Superman is busy, Funnyface kidnaps Lois Lane and transforms her from a real person into a comic book character. Superman forms up a team with some other comic strip heroes that have been brought to life, and together they rescue Lois and take down the villains. This guy last appeared in 1986, and I seriously hope we see him again. He's crazy looking. Oh man. Number 6. Mr. Mixzipple. Jeez, is that an L in there? Anyway, the name is intended to be unpronounceable. We'll just call him Mixie. First appearing in Superman Volume 2 in 1987, Mixie is an imp from the 5th dimension who periodically visits and gives Superman a hard time. He first appears as a dashing young man by the name of Ben DeRoy and convinces Lois Lane to marry him. Superman eventually puts 2 and 2 together, and the imp agrees to go back home if Superman can get him to type, spell, or say his name backwards. Not Superman's name, but the other guy's crazy name. So, this evil, nefarious dude, he creates a giant typewriter and he makes up a name on the spot, choosing the name I mentioned earlier, figuring, oh, this is gonna be impossible for Superman. Superman defiantly says something along the lines of, "You couldn't even type that name forwards." And so Mixie does it and demonstrates, not realizing Superman has already rewired the typewriter, causing Mixie to write his own name backwards, banishing himself. He once even tried to do nice things, granting people's wishes, but not in the right way. For example, a woman wishes that her dough would finally rise, and it fills her entire home, pouring out onto the street. Another scene has a bunch of people wishing they had a Riverview apartment, so he makes their building sprout legs and literally walk over to the river. This villain did appear in 2008, but I think he still counts as forgotten. And honestly, he's too bizarre for me not to mention. Number 5, Black Rock. First appearing in Justice League America number 43 in 1990, Peter Silverstone was an American scientist, the Director of Research and Technology for the United Broadcasting Company. His task was to create a corporate-backed superhero that the UBC could provide exclusive coverage of. He creates a suit that gives the wearer power over broadcasting frequencies. The suit is powered by a mysterious sentient black stone. Silverstone manipulated his boss and his nephew into wearing the suit before he finally tries it on for himself. Sad to say though, after years and years of butting heads with Superman and losing, he becomes a washed up, failed villain who hangs out with guys like Kite Man. Eventually, he is driven mad by overuse of the Blackstone powers and winds up getting killed by Sam Benjamin, who then steals the stone and becomes the new Black Rock. Number 4, the Prankster. Oswald Loomis first appeared in 1988, the popular host of The Uncle Oswald Show, an early morning children's program. When ratings for his show plummeted and it was canceled, Oswald totally lost it and went on a pranking spree, terrorizing Metropolis. He once even held Lois Lane hostage and tried to marry her. Later in life, he sells his soul to Lord Satanus, and this changes him, making him young and athletic. He is a manic trickster who uses futuristic technology to create gadgets and weapons, all while retaining a comical theme. This guy doesn't come up as often as other practical joke-inspired villains such as Joker and the Riddler, so we haven't seen him for a bit. Number 3, Terra Man. When DC Comics rebooted everything with the New 52 in 2011, this guy was recreated to better suit a modern audience. But in 1972, he first appeared in Superman 249 as Tobias Manning, a desperado cowboy sent into the future. When he was young, he encountered an alien during his first holdup, while his father was recovering from a gunshot wound. The alien decides to take the boy and raise him for himself, taking him off into space and teaching him how to handle futuristic weapons. The alien, known as the Collector, also gave Toby a winged horse named Nova, which became his steed. He calls himself Terra Man and travels with the Collector, robbing and plundering all through space until his memories return, and one day he kills the Collector to avenge his father. He then travels to Earth, where he continues acting like a cowboy and performing nefarious evil deeds. He has some hilarious Western-themed gadgets, including an energy lasso and a chewing tobacco capable of aging Superman. Number 2, Dragorin. First appearing in 1971, Dragoran is the man from Transylvania. Transylvania is a miniature planet Superman visits with his friend Jimmy Olsen in Superman's Pal Jimmy Olsen, Volume 1. Man, wouldn't it be nice to be Superman's pal? He's literally just a vampire. We think the writers might have been phoning it in a bit on this one. Throughout the story, Superman and Jimmy encounter not only Dragoran, but a werewolf too. I really wish I had more to tell you about this guy, but there is a reason that he's a forgotten villain. And now, number 1, Zavam the Invincible. This dude appeared in Action Comics 351 in 1967. Zavam was created by the god of Olympus after they looked into the future and saw Superman, believing him to be a rival god. Zavam was built from clay and sent off to defeat the Man of Steel. Using godlike powers making him seemingly unstoppable, he becomes the leader of the United Crime Syndicate and humbles Superman. Superman is only able to finally defeat Zavam after collecting a magical belt from another group of gods led by Neptune. Zavam's name is an anagram in reference to the godlike powers he possesses, including Zeus, Hercules, Achilles, and others. He has not reappeared since his defeat, but it would be nice. Number 10, Microwave Man. Also known as Louis Paget, we meet this villain in Action Comics number 487 in 1978. A space traveler, he returned to Earth after 40 years of flying through the stars aboard an alien spacecraft. Before he began his journey, he was already the costumed villain Microwave Man. Upon returning to Earth, he calls on his alien friends to grant him his youth back, but it comes at a cost. His life will be shortened to just a few hours. He says, yeah, I'm good with that. He just wants the opportunity to defeat Superman. So Superman agrees and even allows Microwave Man to defeat him in a test of strength. Louis dies satisfied and the aliens claim his body and they set him adrift in space. It's a touching story in which the villain is dispatched within 2 issues, meaning we will probably never see him again. It's nice though. Hey gang, before we hit number 9, I really need you guys to hit that like button. It's not required, I will continue with the list either way, but we do appreciate it. Number 9, Sand Superman. First appearing in Superman 233 in 1971, Sand Superman is exactly what he sounds like. Created from a portal between Earth and the Quorum dimension, Sand Superman just wants to drain Superman of all his power and knowledge. However, as it gains energy, he also gains the desire to act like Superman, including serving unselfishly as a superhero. Unfortunately, Superman can't really take him on as a sidekick or anything like that for 2 reasons. 1, Sand Superman only gains power by taking it away from Superman. And 2, if they would actually touch each other ever, Sand Superman's alternatively charged atoms would just result in a huge explosion big enough to destroy the entire planet. Sand Superman's story was really not all that lengthy, so it's pretty easy to see why he hasn't returned. Coming in at number 8, J. Wilbur Wolfenham. He would call himself a business consultant or philanthropist, but make no mistake, he is a con man. Mr. Wolfenham first appeared in Superman 341 and was erased from existence following the collapse of the multiverse during the Crisis on Infinite Earth series. In his debut, he has a scheme to sell amulets which allegedly teleport the wearer to safety if a disaster strikes. Superman comes along and decides to put this product to the test. This all happens in a story called The Man Who Could Cancel Catastrophe. In another story called Sale of the Century, Wilbur thinks he's pulled off a master scam by selling the Earth off to an alien real estate agent until the alien actually comes back, and then of course Superman has to come straighten everything out. This guy is seriously a real piece of work, but we haven't seen him again since 1985.
Coming in at number 7, it's none other than Superman's twisted doppelganger, Bizarro. Now, honestly, when it comes directly to power levels, Bizarro should be a little bit higher on this list. When push comes to shove, as an imperfect duplication of Superman made by Lex Luthor's duplication ray, Bizarro has comparable strength to his nemesis, and has opposite versions of some of his more notable abilities. Freeze vision instead of heat vision, flame breath instead of freezing breath, and so on and so forth. However, Bizarro also feels a strong calling to be more than just a twisted version of Superman, and over the years has become more of an anti-hero than an outright villain, and seems content to try and carve out his own little slice of paradise on his new planet, Bizarro World. Taking up a controversial spot at number 6, we have the one and only Lex Luthor, Superman's arch rival. Hating the idea of an alien having so much power and receiving so much love on planet Earth, Lex Luthor has been everything from a mad scientist to a ruthless businessman to even the President of the United States in his desperate quest, man, once and for all. He may be merely a human being, but with his dark intellect and lack of morals, Lex Luthor is more than capable of being noted as one of Superman's most powerful foes, whether he's inside a kryptonite-fueled suit of armor or merely using his giant evil brain. Coming in at number 5 with another example of Superman's own power set being twisted and used against him, we have Superboy Prime. A jaded version of Kal-El from an alternate universe known as Earth Prime, this Superboy was the only superpowered hero on his own world, with all other heroes merely being fictional. After this reality was wiped out during the Crisis on Infinite Earths, Superboy Prime became obsessed with recapturing his past glory as the one and only Man of Steel and slowly twisted into a psychotic version of Kal-El, determined to wipe out every other Clark Kent. Few thoughts are scarier in the DC multiverse than a rogue Superman determined to cross dimensions to get exactly what he wants. At number 4, we've got to go with Mongol, an intergalactic conqueror from the stars. One of the few non-Kryptonians in Superman's rogues gallery that could still survive coming to actual blows with him, Mongol is the charismatic leader of Warworld, a mobile battle station of a planet that travels the universe looking for planets to, naturally, wage war against. Training for a time with the Sinestro Corps, Mongol is one of the most skilled combatants and tactical adversaries that Superman has ever faced. And while he may be less known than the other intergalactic conqueror known as Darkseid, Mongol and his extended warlord family are a persistent thorn in Superman's side. Coming in at number 3, it's the Superman killer himself, Doomsday. Now, I know what you're thinking. This is a list of Superman villains you wouldn't expect to be the most powerful, so how is the alien that's literally best known for killing Superman gonna count? Well, while Doomsday already does have an incredible reputation for killing Superman in the 90s, the character has only gotten more deadly, powerful, and unpredictable in the years since. Doomsday's most horrifying power is his ability to evolve and improve over any method that has defeated him in the past, an ability that has led to the creature becoming more and more intelligent with each encounter, and even exuding a toxin that's so powerful it was able to take out superpowered individuals like Wonder Woman. While Superman may have only died once to this Kryptonian monster, Doomsday is still biding his time for the rematch that'll finally let him get a second victory against the Man of Steel. At number 2, we've got yet another twisted version of Kal-El with the terrifying Ultraman. In the alternate universe of Earth 3, Superman's biological father was a far eviler man, and filled his infant son's spaceship with messages and monologues about his ideology and how Kal-El deserved to be the strongest possible being in the universe. Murdering his adoptive parents at the young age of only 7 after discovering that shards of his home planet, Kryptonite, made him stronger, this version of Superman instead took the name Ultraman, and wound up assassinating the President of the United States before forming the Crime Syndicate, a dark doppelganger of the main DC Universe's Justice League. While other evil versions of Superman have been held back by mutations or outside intervention, Ultraman is Superman at his peak, but with none of the morals and nothing holding him back, meaning that every time he crosses over into another universe, Superman needs to stay on his guard. At our top spot on this list is the character I've been looking forward to pronouncing this entire video. It's Mr. Mxyzptlk. Superman's main two weaknesses throughout all of comics are kryptonite and magic, and while Mxyzptlk might not have much of the former, his magic is beyond compare. A being from the 5th dimension who enjoys tormenting the most powerful hero of our more basic 3D existence, Mxyzptlk's dimensional abilities essentially make him omnipotent with magic, allowing him to alter the rules of logic, reality, and capable of teleporting wherever he pleases. The only way to defeat him is usually by some made-up rule of his own decree, such as getting him to spell his name backwards, a spell that can send him back to his own dimension for a guaranteed 90 days. Definitely one of the oddest villains Superman has ever faced. Mxyzptlk is honestly more of a nuisance than an outright bad guy, but his limitless powers make us very grateful that he seems more focused on trickery than outright world domination.
Number 10. Nuclear Man. Regarded by many as one of the strangest and most half-baked Superman villains to date, Nuclear Man hasn't had too many appearances outside of his introduction in 1987 Superman 4 The Quest for Peace. He was created by Lex Luthor from a strand of hair containing Superman's DNA, which he threw into a genetic stew. Superman is actually the one responsible for this villain's birth though, as he wasn't fully born until Superman threw the nuclear missile containing the device that had the stew in it into the sun. Having been created using Kryptonian DNA, he possesses powers similar to Superman, such as invulnerability, energy projection, flight, and of course the standard super strength and speed. However, Nuclear Man needs to have constant exposure to sunlight in order to use them. If he's left out of the sun for too long, he becomes completely immobilized and must wait for some more sunlight in order to recharge. In the movie, Superman stopped Nuclear Man for good by causing a sudden solar eclipse when he moved the moon in front of the sun, then dropped him into the heart of a nuclear reactor where he could become an abundant source of energy for the remainder of his days. Now, like I said before, Nuclear Man hasn't made too many appearances outside of Superman 4, but if you want to see him in comic book form, check him out in his one-off appearance in 2018 Superman Volume 5, Number 2. Number 9. Microwave Man. Louis Paget from Earth 1, known as the costume baddie Microwave Man, has a pretty interesting story despite only appearing in 2 issues back in 1978. Paget spent 40 years traveling around the galaxy aboard an alien spacecraft before returning back to Earth in October of 1978. Now, not much is known about his life before his interstellar journey other than the fact that he was already known as the villain Microwave Man. Upon his return, Paget calls upon his alien friends one last time to grant him back his youth, even though doing this would shorten his remaining life to only a few more hours. This didn't seem to bother him, and once he was young again, Paget assumed the identity of Microwave Man once more and challenged Superman. Now, Paget's alien friends inform Superman that he only wants the glory of defeating him and will die very soon, so Superman, like the upstanding good guy that he is, allows Paget to defeat him in a test of strength, after which he dies satisfied, and the aliens come to claim his body to set adrift in space as he had once requested. Making his first appearance in 1978's Action Comics number 487, why not check his short run out for yourself? Number 8. The Puzzler. So little is known about either version of the Puzzler, so don't feel bad if you're not familiar with this character or just generally don't know who they are. The first to take up this name was Valerie Van Haften, a longtime admirer of Superman and someone who wanted nothing more than to get his attention, so she had the idea of becoming a heroine with the intent of one day joining his team. This proved to be a lot harder than she thought, and she quickly turned to crime instead and eventually joined the likes of the Secret Six to get a Get Out of Hell free card. Her powers are actually pretty cool, as she's made up of a bunch of indestructible puzzle pieces that she has full control over, allowing her to deconstruct at will and even fling the pieces at her opponents like a bullet. Now, the second puzzler is from the Prime Earth and is actually known as Puzzler Bot, a creation of that universe's puzzler that mimics the abilities of its creator through technological assimilation. That's about it when it comes to these characters, so if you know any more, please let me know in the comments below, but in the meantime, check them out for yourself in 2002 Superman Volume 2 number 187 and 2013's Justice League of America Volume 3 number 3.
Number 7. Bizarro. Alright, so one time the Joker possessed the 5th dimensional powers of Mr. Mixie, and he created his own insane version of Superman. I'm sure you've heard of him already. Bizarro is like a dark Superman, a shadow self or opposite version of the Man of Steel. The Man of Iron? No, it's already taken. He has mostly the same powers as Superman, except with Arctic vision instead of heat vision, and flame breath, and you get the idea. The original newspaper version of Bizarro included the iconic Bizarro speech patterns, with all Bizarro's comments meaning the opposite of what he says. Having nearly the same skills as Superman, he would be a pretty serious threat to Superman if it weren't for his inferior mind. The people of Bizarro World aren't the brightest. The Bizarro concept has spawned a lot of cool storylines for DC though. You're not a real DC superhero until you've got a Bizarro version of yourself running around. Funny story, Bizarro was once captured and tortured by General Zod, apparently only because he looks like Superman. Number 6. General Zod. Like Bizarro, General Zod is a similarly dark reflection of the Man of Steel. Zod has appeared many times, hell-bent on the destruction of Earth to rebuild Krypton. As a fellow Kryptonian, he has mostly the same powers as Superman, making him an enormous threat to Superman and to the world. He has appeared infrequently since the Crisis on Infinite Earths, a mind-bending event rewriting much of DC's entire history. Zod cares very little about others, including his own race. Everything he does is part of some masterful, self-serving evil scheme. If Superman were to turn evil and attempt to dominate the Earth, General Zod gives us a pretty good idea of what that might look like. Number 5. Darkseid. Darkseid is a tyrannical ruler, dread lord of the nightmare world Apocalypse. He exists outside the normal universe, in a realm known as the Fourth World. He has been called the God of Evil. His goal is no less than conquering all of creation and the entire multiverse. He seeks the anti-life equation, a power that will allow him to turn anyone into a mindless slave bound to him. He once kidnapped Supergirl, using black kryptonite to brainwash her into joining his all-women villain squad, the Female Furies, led by Granny Goodness, the cruel and evil lieutenant. Darkseid is one of the new gods from the Fourth World, who evolved in close proximity to a primeval energy along with superior technology and genetic stability. The people of this realm are immortal, stronger and faster than Homo sapiens, despite looking pretty much the same. Darkseid also wields an ability called the Omega Effect, allowing him to travel through time and space, as well as break barriers and force fields. His main power is his Omega Beam, energy blasts coming from his eyes that are capable of teleporting targets to another universe. He has complete control over his Omega Beams, and they can even change direction in the air. Number 4. Brainiac. Vril Dox, aka Brainiac, is an artificial intelligence created by the computer tyrants of Kolu, a world where knowledge and logic reign supreme. Brainiac was designed to conquer alien worlds, but he quickly became more and more intelligent, eventually becoming a villain that does whatever it takes to acquire more knowledge. He once shrunk down the entire city of Kandor into a miniature for himself to study. He also created a remote scout, programmed to think it was the original Vril Dox. This scout came to the Earth and took over the body of a mentalist named Milton Fine, who worked under the alias Brainiac. Generally believed to be the most intelligent being in the DC universe, he possesses a 12th level intellect, making him even smarter than Lex Luthor. Interestingly, he was once defeated in the past through a sensory overload. Superman forced him into Earth's atmosphere, and he became overwhelmed by the germs and microbes of the Earth, as well as the wild sights and sounds of human society. Number 3. Doomsday. Doomsday was created on Krypton in the distant past, long before Kryptonians had dominance over the planet. In this early day, Krypton was a violent hellscape where only the strongest creatures survived. Doomsday was created by a scientist named Bertrand, who was trying to create the ultimate life form. His first experiments failed, and the test subjects dying on Krypton. Bertrand cultivated cells from the dead test subjects and infuse them into the next one, repeating the process over 40 years. The life form possesses the genetic memory of its previous forms, and therefore is immune to being killed in any way that it has died in the past. Unfortunately, this also resulted in the ultimate survivor becoming a relentless killing machine. Eventually, Doomsday confronts his creator and destroys him, escaping from the wastelands of Krypton. He has sharp, protruding bone claws, and a whole host of superpowers, including most notably the ability to adapt to any attack. Doomsday and Superman once had a lengthy, violent fight in Metropolis that ended with what was assumed to be the death of them both. Number 2. Lex Luthor. Lex is undoubtedly one of Superman's greatest foes. A brilliant scientist and billionaire philanthropist, he is powerful and creative. He despises the Man of Steel for his alien heritage and considers him a threat to all of humanity. Over the years, Lex has been around, once even becoming president. He even had a position on the Justice League in the past. There's a genius dynamic between Lex and Superman, with Superman being an alien and achieving things that humanity never thought possible, and on the flip side, Lex Luthor is like peak human success. He's brilliant and rich and successful, but too arrogant and self-interested to use his gifts to benefit humanity. He was once reborn inside an immortal, half-Martian, half-human body, and in this form was known as Apex Lex, and was immensely powerful. Apex Lex can travel across infinite realities. He is vulnerable and nigh omnipotent, wielding the 7 dark energies of the universe. This guy was dangerous enough before. Luthor's combination of hatred towards Superman and near limitless power potential land him here at our number 2 spot. And now, number 1. Batman. Batman is a bit of a problem for Superman. Not only does Batman always carry kryptonite on him, just in case, but Batman is also the kind of dude who just does what he wants and is pretty hard to argue with. Batman and Superman have gone head to head many times in the past, with different results, but it's worth noting that Batman has defeated nearly every iconic comic character within recent years. It has also been said that Batman could defeat anyone given enough prep time. Similar to Lex Luthor, Batman is also a billionaire who isn't too thrilled about an alien flying around and destroying buildings with his superpowers. Superman versus Batman. These guys are two sides of the same coin. They want the same thing, but have very different ways of achieving it. Batman and Superman are heroes, but if there's anyone that could likely take down the Man of Steel, it's Batman.